Welcome, dear friends, to the Crimson Academy's course entitled Glimpses of Light. Dear friends, Glimpses of Light is our most recent course where we share biographical sketches of individuals who have striven to promote the oneness of humanity. Dear friends, our first individual that we're going to be highlighting is Mr. Robert Turner. So, Mr. Robert Turner was the first African American to accept His Holiness Baha'u'llah, as attested by the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi in God Passes By. He was born as a slave in 1855 and was freed by the 13th Amendment on the 18th of December, 1863. He then worked for an early Baha'i, Mrs. Phoebe Hearst. For 35 years, Turner faithfully served as butler to Phoebe Apperson Hearst and Senator George Hearst, parents of newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst. Here, dear friends, is a picture of Mr. Robert Turner, the first African American to accept His Holiness Baha'u'llah. Robert Turner was the butler of Mrs. Phoebe Hearst. Robert Turner's post was one of unusual responsibility, carrying with it largely the stewardship of his wealthy and socially prominent employer. He was faithful, dependable, and wise. When Mrs. Hearst was given the Baha'i message by Mrs. Getzinger in Paris, Robert Turner, from the vantage ground of his service station, listened with eager words and eager interest to the words not addressed to himself. He sought opportunities to know more about so wonderful a faith, was taught, and became a firm believer. In the year 1900, he accompanied the Hearst-Getzinger party to Akka, Palestine, to see His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha, still a prisoner under despotic and corrupt government rule. Robert Turner was with the first Western pilgrims, including Edward and Lua Getzinger, Mrs. Thornborough Cropper, and Phoebe Hearst, who visited His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha in the Holy Land in December of 1898. Abdu'l-Baha showed a great deal of affection and love to Robert Turner, contrary to the interracial relationship in the West at that time. The beloved guardian has named Robert Turner as one of the 19 disciples of Abdu'l-Baha. And here, dear friends, we see a picture of the members of the group that made the first Western pilgrimage in 1898. And in the top left, we see Mr. Robert Turner. When the party entered the room of the master, they assumed that Robert Turner, who was with them, would of course follow. After greeting them with his welcome, His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha waited with his face turned toward the door in evident expectation. The ladies looked all around, and to their surprise, they found that Robert was not in the room. The master then went to the door on the outside, of which Robert stood in an attitude of deepest humility. At sight of the master, he dropped upon his knees and exclaimed, my Lord, I am not worthy to be here." Abdu'l-Baha raised him to his feet, giving him a most affectionate, fatherly embrace. The exceedingly great kindness of the master to Robert Turner was most impressive. On one occasion, the honor was bestowed upon him of sharing the master's servitude. He was also assured that if he remained firm and steadfast until the end, he would be a door through which a whole race would enter the kingdom. Mrs. Phoebe Hearst, prompted by her experiences at Akka and her esteem for Robert Turner upon returning to her Washington, D.C. home, invited there a number of the most prominent educators of the colored race to meet her. They were entertained in her sumptuous home, not only by material attractions, but with heavenly food, the glad tidings, and the great message. Radiantly she announced to them that the deliverer of mankind had indeed come. During those early days, the confirmations were mighty, but the tests and trials were also great. Many trees were uprooted by the storms and trials, but those that were firm took deeper roots. Robert Turner, with iron sight, had his clear vision of reality. Henceforth, he refused to use his own expression to let the world throw dust in his eyes. Around 1898, Robert Turner sent his photograph with a letter to Abdu'l-Baha. In response, Abdu'l-Baha revealed the following tablet that was sent to him through Phoebe Hearst. O thou who art pure in heart, sanctified in spirit, peerless in character, beauteous in face, thy photograph hath been received, revealing thy physical frame in the utmost grace and the best appearance. Thou art dark in countenance and bright in character. Thou art like unto the pupil of the eye, which is dark in color, yet it is the fount of light and the revealer of the contingent world. I have not forgotten, nor will I forget thee. I beseech God that he may graciously make thee the sign of his bounty amidst mankind. Illumine thy face with the light of such blessings as are vouchsafed by the merciful Lord. Single thee out for his love in this age, which is distinguished among all the past ages and centuries. And here, dear friends, we have a picture of a pupil of an eye. And it writes, the function of the pupil is to allow light to enter the eye so it can be focused on the retina to begin the process of sight. Typically, the pupils appear perfectly round, equal in size, and black in color. And His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha wrote, thou art like unto the pupil of the eye, which is dark in color, yet it is the fount of light and the revealer of the contingent world. So beautiful. After a few years, there came to him an illness, which proved fatal. It came at a time and place that surrounded him with non-Baha'is. His attendants heard him often repeat, even when delirious, an expression strange and unknown. After his passing inquiry revealed that his last word was the greatest name. Thus he measured up to the divine standard of faith and loyalty, and constantly increasing are those who owe so noble a character gratitude and reverence. Following his death, which was really the portal to a richer and more exalted life, a Baha'i burial ringstone was placed upon his finger by Mirza Ali Quli Khan. Dear friends, the following account was found in Ali Quli Khan's papers and bears a note in Florence's hand saying, written by your father in reply to Mrs. Ella Cooper's questions. In the spring of 1909, when I was in California as a guest of Mrs. Hearst at Pleasanton, Mrs. Hearst, who had informed me of the illness of Robert Turner, suggested my going with her to San Francisco to call on Robert. I found him quite ill in bed. He was happy to receive me and inquired of the news in Akka. He then, with great joy, described his visit to Akka in the company of Mrs. Hearst a few years before the end of the last century. He asked me to write and send his love to the Master and to ask for his prayers. Soon after, I wrote the Master and described our visit with Robert Turner. In a tablet which I received from the Master later in Washington, he wrote 4 lines regarding Robert Turner, which I translate as follows. Convey wondrous Abha greetings to Mr. Robert, the servant of that honorable lady, and say to him, be not grieved at your illness, for thou hast attained eternal life and hast found the way to the world of the kingdom. God willing, we shall meet one another with joy and fragrance in that divine world. And I beg of God that you may also find rest in this material world. And here, dear friends, is a picture of that tablet to Robert Turner in the handwriting of His Holiness Abdul Baha. And this is the translation, translated by Mirza Ahmad Sohrab, of that tablet, August 17th, 1909, and we will read it. Through the maidservant of God, Mrs. Helen Goodall, to Mr. Robert Turner. He is God, O thou servant of God. Thank thou God that from the day of the meeting until now, Abdul Baha has not forgotten thee. He remembers thee always. I ask of the Lord of the kingdom that he may make thee dear in this world and the world to come. Crown thee with the love of God and make thee an ignited and enkindled candle among the colored race. Upon thee be Baha el Abha. Signed, Abdul Baha Abbas. And as mentioned, it was translated by Mirza Ahmad Sohrab, August 17, 1909, Chicago, Illinois. And dear friends, on the passing of Robert Turner, His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha wrote, "As to Mr. Robert Turner, the news of his ascension saddened the hearts. He was in reality in the utmost sincerity. Glory be to God! What a shining candle was aflame in that black-colored lamp. Praise be to God that that lighted candle ascended from the earthly lamp to the kingdom of eternity and gleamed and became a flame in the heavenly assemblage. Praise be to God that you adorned his blessed finger with the ring bearing the inscription, 'Verily I originated from God and returned unto him.' This too is a proof of his sincerity, and that in his last breath he breathed the Alawapa, whereby the hearts of those present were impressed. O thou Creator, O thou Forgiver, glorify the precious Robert in thy kingdom and in the garden of the paradise of Abha. Bring him into intimate association with the birds of the celestial meadow. O thou knowing God, although that sinless one was black in color, like unto the black pupil of the eye, he was a source of shining light. O thou forgiving Lord, cause that longing one to attain thy meeting, and cause that thirsty one to drink the water of life in abundance. Thou art the forgiver, the pardoner, the compassionate. So beautiful. Dear friends, we have a note here. It says, here Turner is described as sinless, which is remarkable, comparing him to the black pupil of the eye. Abdu'l-Baha acclaimed him as a source of shining light, redounding to his further honor and distinction. Robert Turner was named by the beloved guardian Shoa'i Effendi as one of the 19 disciples of Abdu'l-Baha. And here, dear friends, we have the list of and pictures of the 19 disciples of Abdu'l-Baha. Mr. and Dr. John E. Esselmont, Thornton Chase, Howard McNutt, Sarah Farmer, Hippolyte Dreyfus Barney, Lillian Capps, and Mr. Robert Turner. Arthur Bronze, Lua Getzinger, Joseph Hannen. Short note, Joseph Hannen was the one who introduced the faith to Mr. Louis Gregory. Chester Thatcher, Charles Greenleaf, Mrs. J.D. Brittingham, Mrs. Thornborough Cropper, Helen S. Goodall, Arthur P. Dodge, William H. Hoare, Dr. J.G. Auger, and William Brandel, the 19 disciples of His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha. In the 1950s, the American Baha'i community placed a beautiful black granite gravestone over his grave in Coloma, California, next to Mrs. Hearst's grave. Thank you very much, dear friends. This was our first episode of Glimpses of Light. Thank you.